Perfect. So, all right, guys, let's start the next section of the presentation. Now that we have understood what smart contracts in general are, how they are developed, what are their importance, the right question to ask at this point is it all sunshine and rainbows? Are smart contracts really safe? Is it everything is fine with smart contracts, or are there some dark sides of smart contracts as well? If you really think about it, there are some dark sides. So let me just make it the slideshow. Cool. So is it really all sunshine and rainbows? Are smart contracts really very smart? The answer right now is no, they're not. So there are certain limitations of smart contracts which make it absolutely important for us to know the limitations because, like I mentioned, smart contracts are not just any front end or back end code. These are code that actually store money. And you are basically writing code where people will drop their money, and you have to make sure that the code is really, really secure, right? Okay, what are the limitations of smart contracts? So first is security. Um, if anyone of you have been in Web3 for so long, chances are you might have heard of at least one attack that keeps happening every now and then. You might have heard of reentrancy attacks or any attack that took away $100 million from the smart contract, where attacker just impersonated some other address and they were able to wipe out the entire contract. These things keep happening in the Web3 world. And the reason they do happen is because some developer might have written a bad code, and when it comes to smart contract related hacks, and it basically means that smart contracts, although they are able to do a lot of things, if developed in a wrong fashion, they will not be able to uh, stop any bad actor from misusing the smart contract. So security of smart contracts is a really, really major concern right now, because like I mentioned, they are really important code and they are supposed to be secure, but it turns out they're not, because we might be doing some mistakes while developing smart contracts, which is why we get to see a lot of hacks every now and then, right? The second limitation with smart contracts is immutability. Now, till now, the presentation, we have been glorifying immutability. We have been talking about how immutable feature is really interesting, because that's what makes us trust the blockchain. And we know that if one data is on blockchain, it cannot be changed by anyone. And the fact that people can't change the data on chain is really relieving, and we know that we can trust it. But why is it a limitation in the smart contracts? Because I mean, some of you might be software developers here and you know how code works, and you know that smart contracts are code too, right? So they are basically, no matter how intense or imperative they might sound, even if they store money, they are still just codes, just pieces of codes. And if they are codes, they're supposed to be containing bugs, because every code, I mean, it's really impossible for anyone to write contracts or write any code without any bugs. Bugs, like being the presence of bug in any piece of code, is inevitable. It's supposed to be there. But what's worse is that in smart contracts, we cannot really fix the bug after it's deployed. Uh, Immutability, while it was really a boon for us in the Web3 world, it becomes a curse when you find a bug in a contract that is already deployed on the chain, and now you know that you can't do anything to fix that bug. So unlike any other code that you might have seen in JavaScript, in websites or in mobile apps, if you find a bug, you go ahead, you fix it, you deploy the new version of the production, and that's all. It's sorted. But a smart contract is not that simple unless you have upgradable smart contract, which again is very, very tricky to upgrade. You chances are you might be stuck with a bug which you can never fix, which again comes back to the fact that it's really important for you to develop smart contracts in a completely secure manner. Third point is excessive dependency on the underlying blockchain. So this is really a bad condition, because, so let's say my smart contracts are deployed on Ethereum, and let's say tomorrow Ethereum as a blockchain as a whole, its architecture goes under some major change, right? Um, Chances are, because my smart contracts are directly linked to the Ethereum, chances are my smart contracts also get affected with that. Now, there are some blockchains out there, in case you are interested in this point, like Cosmos, which are building application specific blockchains, which basically means if you are developing a smart contract on Cosmos and you're deploying it, no matter what happens in the underlying architecture of the entire Cosmos blockchain, your contracts will remain safe. But that's not the case with Ethereum. Ethereum, if tomorrow Ethereum goes with a really big change, I'm not sure what, but if it goes, chances are it might affect my smart contracts as well. Fourth point is nascent stages. So like I mentioned, smart contracts, Solidity, Viper, or any other language that deals with smart contracts, all of these are really new right now. So I mean, Solidity itself is a 0 point something version, which technically means it's just starting out. Um, the reason it's really concerning is because if you go to the Solidity documentation and you try to look at the entire documentation, there will be a column which says bug fixes or something like that, which that column basically includes all the fixes of the previous version, which basically means that every version of Solidity has some sort of bug, which are fixed in later on. So even if you develop your contract completely securely, chances are there might be some bugs in the underlying smart contract language itself that might affect your contracts. So because, and by the way, like it's really fast. So Solidity fixes its bugs and releases a new version every now and then. So it's really hard sometimes for smart contract developers to keep up with the pace, because you might have a new version of Solidity tomorrow, and they might have fixed some bugs which were in the previous version, which you were using till yesterday. So one of the limitations is the fact that it's really nascent stages, and some of the bugs in the language itself are there which we are completely unaware of, and this will get fixed over time. But again, since we have already started with DeFi and everything, we are using some of the older versions. I have used some of the older versions that had some bugs, and I had to upgrade my version in smart contract again and again so that I can be on the secure side. And the last point and the last limitation is the fact that smart contracts are not really capable of dealing with real data. That means smart contracts and the code in a smart contract itself is like a black box. So one of the facts that makes smart contracts really secure is the fact that they cannot really interact with the outside world. They have their own world within itself, which technically means they have their own source of truth. For example, a smart contract directly cannot know the price of Ethereum. So Ethereum, let's say if today it's $1,500, a smart contract will not know that, because that's a real world data which keeps changing again and again. Smart contracts in itself, it's an own world. So to interact with the real world data, it relies on oracles, right? Which is again a concept that you might come up across with in Web3. But the problem is oracles can be manipulated as well. So some of the really biggest hacks, I think BZX or Harvest Finance in the year 2020, those hacks were there because of oracle manipulation attacks, right? So these 5 points are something that really limits the potential of smart contracts. And some of these points will be rectified and made better over and over again in the time frame in future. But as of now, security, immutability, the dependency of smart contracts on an underlying blockchain, its nascent stage, and its inability to interact with real world data, these are real concerns of smart contracts. And every developer who wants to be a blockchain developer, who wants to be working with the smart contracts, needs to be aware of these limitations. Because if you are not, chances are you might think that you have developed a good contract, but you might end up being hacked, because you need to know the limitations first. So specifically talking about, and this is why I have highlighted security here, and some of you also asked security questions. So this is where this interesting session starts. So what exactly are the solutions, at least for the first problem, which is security, right? So there are two very important solutions that we have in hand right now, and which have proven to be very effective. So first of all is following the best practices while developing smart contracts. So like I mentioned, Consensus and Open Zeppelin have did really good job in documenting the entire list of known attacks that your contract might have, the known bugs that your contract might have. So first of all, before you develop any contract, it's important for you to not know the very depth of it, but at least the basics of smart contract security and what might lead to a hack, right? So the very first solution relies on developers, right? Uh, it depends on how well aware a developer is in terms of security, in terms of best practices, in terms of how to optimize gas in a better format. So the first responsibility is for developers to ensure that they write the right amount of contracts in the right fashion, right? The second solution is performing extensive smart contract security audits. So in case some of you might not aware about it, there is a different market out there in the Web3 world, which is called the audit market, which basically means there is a team, there is a company, there are different companies actually who work specifically on reviewing smart contracts and trying to find bugs in those smart contracts, then documenting them and then providing them to the client so that they can figure out what all is bad in a particular code. This set of people, they are called smart contract auditors, whose primary job is not to write code, but to try to break the code and see where a particular code can be broken, or how an attacker can attack the contract. So in a nutshell, the solution for security issues in a smart contract right now are two. The first depends on developer, which is developers need to be very aware of how to write good smart contract. They need to constantly learn and grow. They need to be like they need to have the student mindset to keep learning every now and then, because Solidity language in itself keeps changing. So the first responsibility is for the developers to write good smart contract code. And the second responsibility is for the auditors, smart contract auditors, who are basically responsible for reviewing the code and finding out issues in that code, right? So these two are the possible solutions. And because we've already discussed about the developer side of the story of how you need to be very sure about best practices, about gas optimizations, about deploying the smart contract on the chain, we have known the developer side of the story. Now it's time for us to understand the auditor side of the story. And lucky enough, I have been in both of these worlds, so I can share quite a few things about both of these worlds. So now let's talk about smart contract security and auditors. So like I mentioned, a smart contract audit, as the name suggests, is basically a procedure where you take a particular code, you review it from top to bottom, you use some of the security tools that are there in the market right now, you try to run those tools on this contract, you do any possible step, any possible procedure to find out as many bugs as possible in the smart contract. Because uh, even if it's a small bug, uh, it's always recommended to fix it and then deploy on the chain. So testing smart contracts, security audits with smart contracts, all of these are just preparation for the smart contract to be deployed on chain properly and securely, right? So if I talk about smart contract audits in general, you know the TLDR is basically a process where you review the code, you find issues in the code, and then you fix it. So how exactly does the audit step works? So basically, there are 5 important steps in any smart contract audit. The first step is basically the audit scope and documentation gathering. So now you forget about the development side of things. Let's say the smart contract developer already developed a particular smart contract, and I am the auditor. He came to me and he's like, "Hey, can you please just audit the smart contract? Try to help me find the bugs in the smart contract." So I, being an auditor, I'll go through these 5 steps as an auditor, and I usually go through these 5 steps as an auditor to find bugs. So the very first step that I do as auditor is defining the audit scope, trying to understand which contract in that repository are under the audit scope. And then the most important first step is to gather the documentation. So documentation, like I mentioned in the very first slides of smart contract development, is really important because that gives the auditor an idea of what the developer, how the developer wants the smart contracts to execute, right? If I read the documentation, I'll understand that this is how the developer wants this smart contract to be executed. And then I have an idea of how the intentional behavior of the contract is. So if he wants function ABC to have a flow of A, B, and C, I need to read that. I need to understand. The problem is when they do not provide me a documentation and they simply give me a repository and a code, and they are like, "Hey, just audit it." I will audit the contract, but again, it affects my understanding of the contract. It affects me not being on the same page as a developer. So chances are I might not understand the protocol very effectively like the developer does. So the very first step is to understand the code really effectively, really well, so that I know what the protocol is supposed to do, right? Second step is the evaluation of test cases. Test cases, by the way, is something that the developer will provide me because he is writing the test cases. Uh, Going through the test cases really helps the auditor understand how each of the functions are supposed to work, and how at least how the developer wants those functions to work. Because then I can go ahead and try to break those functions, try to find bugs. But these are the first 2 steps that I do. Third step is automated testing. So as of now, luckily, we have quite a few automated tools, security tools that allows us to scan a particular contract, try to find the well-known bugs that might be there in the contract. So some of these tools are Slither, Ikinda, Mithril. So these are the tools that I'll provide the link for, and you can go and check it out. But these tools really, it's basically automated testing tools. So it's technically, it's as simple as basically asking computers, hey, tell me what's wrong with this contract. And the computer will give you a list of issues that have happened before and that were exploited before, and they will just give you a list of issues that are present in that contract, right? So this is the third step that I do. Basically, run a security testing tool, try to find bugs of the smart contract that the tool provides. But like I mentioned, we are still at very early stage of Solidity. We are still at very early stage of security tools. So every language, every tool that you see in blockchain right now, space right now, it's evolving as we speak. So we are learning from our mistakes. We're trying to improve these tools, which is why automated testing tools that we have right now, they're not really that effective. So I can run, let's say I use Slither a lot. So I can run a Slither testing tool on any smart contract, and it will give me a list of issues. But chances are most of those issues will be false alarms, which is basically means that it looks like an issue, but it's not really an issue. Or worst case scenario is the automated testing tool will not even give me the entire list of issues that are there in the contract, because finding issues in a smart contract is really tricky. And at least at this point of time, we don't really have any automated testing tool which can give us 100% issues in the smart contract, because the use cases of a smart contract vary. I mean, some smart contract might deal with NFT, while the other ones deal with ERC20 tokens. Some deal with games, while the other deal with financial transactions like flash loans or borrowing and depositing and staking. Or some might deal with governance. So we have a wide range with smart contracts that are possible. So it's really hard to automate the security procedure for all of them, right? Which is why the tools that we have right now, it's really at a very nascent stages, which is why I don't really rely a lot on automated testing tools. I I prefer manual code review a lot, because so that's the fourth step. So the first step is documentation gathering. I understand the protocol, how it works. Second step is to see the test cases. I understand how the test cases are working, if they're passing or they're failing. If they are failing, that's a red mark for me. I'll check it again and again. Then I come to the third step, which is automated testing tools. I run the tools. I try to find bugs in the contract that are very well known. But the fourth step is the most important one, because this is where I'll find most of the smart contract bugs. Manual code review basically means scanning the entire contract from line 1 to line 1000, 2000, or whatever it is. It's a really lengthy procedure, but ideally we have to scan each line. First step is to scan each contract of their own. Second step is to check if one particular contract A is interacting with contract B. And if it is, then we need to figure out if that interaction is done in an adequate way. If it's not, chances are that is a bug. So manual code review is the fourth step, and this is where I find most of my issues in the smart contract. And the last step is adequate documentation of the reports. So once I find these issues, it's my responsibility as an auditor to provide a very clear, a very precise and exact report of what the issue is. And basically my reports include, and usually in general auditors provide a report that includes 3 different or 4 different criteria. First is the headline of what exactly the issue is. Second line mentions the exact line numbers where these issues are present. Third step in that report is basically describing the entire issue of what it is, and most importantly, how it can affect the smart contract execution, right? And the fourth part of that report basically says the recommendation. So I, as an auditor, recommend the developers how exactly to fix that particular issue, right? So these are the 4 sections in any smart contract audit report that you might see. Some reports also cover extensive details, like they can provide a proof of concept. They can actually try to break your contract and provide a screenshot of how they did it and a documentation of how they did it. But yeah, usually there are 2 important notes here of why audit reports should be made very clearly. First is the fact that the developer who is asking for you for your help in their audit, they need to be able to understand the entire issues and recommendations very clearly, right? So you need the first reason why you should document reports very clearly is for the developer to understand. The second reason is really important because let's say someone wrote a contract and you as an auditor, you are auditing the contract. the reason you should write very clear reports is because that report is not just supposed to be read by the developer, but also by the community. And it's important because in a Web3 community, not everyone is a technical guy. So not everyone understands Solidity. So that those community members, before they start putting their money in that contract, they need to make sure whether the contract is safe or not. And they cannot really make sure if a contract is safe because they don't know how to read Solidity code. So they're stuck, right? So at that point of time, they rely on the auditors, which is why it's really important for auditors to write simple reports and explain in detail which functions might be buggy, which functions might have issues, so that the community can read in plain English what issues this contract might have and whether or not they are fixed by the developer. So if they are fixed, only then the community can decide, community members can decide if they want to put their money in the contract. But this is the importance of audit reports. It's not just for developers to understand and fix the issues, it's also for the community to understand whether or not they should interact with a particular contract, right? This in general is the 5 step that we do follow in smart contract audits. And I think now you have pretty good idea of what smart contract audit industry looks like, what exactly are auditors, and what exactly is it that we do. All right, so now we move to the next stage, which is the final stage, and it's all about people like you who might be wanting to enter the Web3 space. Just give me a minute. All right, so stage 3, the inception, which technically means now it's all about you. How do you start in the Web3 world? So first of all, let me be very clear. Although I belong from a technical background and I am a developer myself, it doesn't mean Web3 is just for developers. So there is a wide range of jobs opportunities available in Web3. Let's not talk about development for a second. Let's say you are a writer. Like I mentioned at the very start of my presentation, we need very good storytellers in Web3. The reason is the entire narrative of Web3 that we have right now is very chaotic. People have different ideas of what Web3 is. People have different narratives of what Web3 is. We often compare it to Google and Facebook and think we are glorified, but it's not just about glorification. We cannot just be like, Web3 is super cool and every project should have blockchain. It doesn't work like that. We need better storytellers who can bridge the gap between the technical persons and the non-technical people, who can write good stuff about Web3 that and simplified versions of the complicated technology of Web3 that can make people understand what exactly it is. So if you're a writer, there is a good chance for you to make a very big impact in Web3 world because we need good storytellers in Web3. Are you a designer? So if you're a designer, Web3 is for you because in case any one of you have ever gone to any DeFi protocol or dApp or Web3 product, you might have noticed that it's really, really messy and it's really, really hard for any non-tech person to interact with any dApp. I mean, first of all, you have to install MetaMask, you have to start your MetaMask account, you have to create new addresses, you have to fund your wallet with Ether. So if you're a designer, you might have to come up with new and simplified UI UX solutions, which allows even non-tech people like my dad who can just come and who can interact with any dApp in Web3 with complete ease. Because end users don't really care about what exactly is lying underneath. All they care about is user experience and why they should use a particular dApp if it's super tough. So if you are a UI UX designer, you should come and see how messy Web3 dApps are, and you should try to figure out a way of how to solve it. Third point, are you a tech enthusiast? Are you someone who loves to interact with people, who loves to communicate and discuss ideas? Then definitely Web3 is for you. You can join any Web3 protocol community. You can be a community manager who can actually help build the bridge between the internal team and the community, because like I mentioned, community is really important in Web3, and we need people who understand the tech of some sort, and then they are able to communicate it with the outside community. So yeah, I mean, Web3 is for everyone, not just for developers. So this was just a heads up in case you are wondering whether or not you can enter Web3 with your own skills. And finally, if you are a developer, then hey, definitely Web3 is for you. Now let's talk about, and I think most of you are developers here, so let's talk about how you can start your journey at Web3, right? Even before step 1, I usually recommend starting from step 0. The reason I say that is because you cannot really understand what Web3 is doing for the web and internet in general if you don't understand what problem it solves, right? And you won't understand what problem it solves if you don't know the history of the internet and where we are coming from. What exactly is Web3 and why it is named Web3? What was Web1 and Web2? So if you are a complete beginner in programming, don't worry about Web3. It's never too late to start in Web3. What's important is to enter in the right mindset in the right time and the right direction. And for that, if you're a complete beginner, you cannot just simply start writing smart contracts and think you will do a good job, because you need to understand the history of web, at least the basics. So you need to understand what APIs are, what server client system is, what internet is, what was Web1 and Web2, uh, why centralized databases are bad, why we need decentralization. So if you're a complete beginner, forget about coding. For the first few months, understand the internet and web in general, and that will give you a really good perspective when you actually dive into Web3, because then you will have an idea of what exactly it is that we are solving in Web3. But hey, if you already understand the tech, if you already understand internet and web and you have the basics of it, then jump to step one. Step one is to understand the basics of blockchain and Ethereum. What exactly is blockchain? What exactly is Ethereum? The difference between Bitcoin and Ethereum, why Ethereum is important for developers. And then step second is to understand what exactly makes all this magic happen in Ethereum. How exactly the smart contracts are developed, what exactly are smart contracts are in first place. And the step third, and this is, by the way, optional, it's not for everyone, but if you are someone who is really interested in breaking things, and you really want things to be secure, if you're a security freak basically, then smart contract security is something that will reward you with a lot of things, with incredible salaries, with a lot of recognition in the space, because like I mentioned, we are still at very nascent stages. It's an early stage and there are very few auditors who can actually audit the code really well. So the scope for you is really high if you are going to security. Now let's understand, let's say that you already understand the tech, you already understand the web and internet. So how do you start with the first step? The very first step I would recommend is to start with Ethereum. I mean, you can start with any other chain, but if you really want to understand the basics, and if you really want to build smart contracts and get a job quickly, let's say, get your hands dirty with real protocols, then chances are you might have to start with Ethereum, because every other protocol is right now evolving, and Ethereum is in a good shape. And it like billions of dollars are already logged in Ethereum, which technically means we have done a good job with Ethereum, and it's in a stable state right now. So the first is to start learning Ethereum blockchain, how it works. By the way, it shifted from proof of work to proof of stake. So you need to understand why it shifted, what exactly is gas in Ethereum. And like someone asked here, how exactly is the code converted to machine code? So this is how it is done using EVM. So you need to learn about EVM. And by the way, step one needs to be very easy. It needs to be super easy. You don't have to overwhelm with all the details. The reason that I say is because once you start learning about blockchain, and I learned this the hard way, but once you start learning about blockchain, almost every topic in itself is a rabbit hole. So let's say if you start with wallets or accounts, and if you start diving in deep, I think you will just enter the rabbit hole and you will just get lost completely in just accounts, because there is cryptography involved. There is wallets. There are two different type of wallets. There are asymmetric encryption that you have to learn about. So at least for people who are beginning with blockchain development, don't dive into the complete depths at the very first month. First month should be for you to start with the open arms. You need to understand almost everything, bits and pieces of almost everything, and then gradually you choose your own path. Hey, I like to work on cryptography, so you go and learn about accounts. Hey, I like to learn about smart contracts, so you go and learn about smart contracts specifically. And let's say if you're really interested in security, then you go into smart contract auditing. So at least for the first month, I would say try to learn almost everything, bits and pieces of everything, and then gradually choose your path of what exactly you want. So these are the few things. I mean, you start with Ethereum, you start with EVM, you learn how to set up your MetaMask wallet, why seed phrases are important, what exactly are accounts, how do accounts hold your Ether and funds, right? Uh, One important thing here is to understand how Etherscan works. So Etherscan is the block explorer, because not every one of us can go and set up our own terminal and see the blocks being mined or hashed. Etherscan makes it really easy for us to verify, search, query any transaction in Ethereum, look for any contract in Ethereum, verify any address in Ethereum, and see how the transactions are working. So it's really important for you as a developer to understand what Etherscan does and how to read Etherscan in the first place. Now, let's say you're already into this 1 month and you have learned everything about the basics of blockchain. You have seen a ton of videos now. So now you are almost ready to start with smart contract basics. Uh, and then again, you have options. You can choose which language you want to learn for smart contract development. Ideally, I would recommend Solidity. Maybe I'm a bit biased towards it because I have been doing Solidity. It's my favorite one. But there are other languages as well, like Viper. Uh, I mean, other point to note is that Solidity is still the popular language in smart contract world. So chances are, if you start with Solidity, you might be in a good position. So learn the basics. I mean, most of the basics we already covered. We understand what smart contracts are. We understand the life cycle already, how exactly smart contracts go from documentation phase to conversion to code phase, and then we deploy and test it, and then we actually deploy it. First, we test and audit it, and then we deploy it on the chain. So we understand the life cycle. What's important to understand is how to use these tools that allow us to compile contract, test contract, and deploy contract. The tools that I recommend is Hardhat, definitely my favorite. Foundry is a new one, which is supposed to be very smart and fast. And then Truffle, which was the oldest one, but then gradually it lost its value because it has become a bit very slow. So you need to understand how to compile and test smart contracts as a developer, because this is something that you will do more often and a lot of times. So if you are good with the tools, you are actually a better developer because you can do things faster than anyone else. So like I mentioned, I mean, Remix is an online IDE. You can just go and open Remix in the browser and you can start developing a smart contract, compiling it or testing it. But ideally, if you're really serious about smart contract development, you cannot just rely on Remix, because Remix is good for, let's say, small contracts or simple contracts. But you will not always develop simple contracts in the DeFi world. There are going to be times when you have to work with complex contracts, which are more than 1,000 lines of code, which are more than just one contract. It's a combination of 2 or 3 contracts, and then Remix will fail. Remix is just made for simple contracts, which is why you need to understand that learning tools like Hardhat, Truffle, Foundry is really important for you to learn those and learn smart contract development faster. Now, let's say you have learned the tools, you have selected a particular language, Solidity. Uh, One important thing that people often miss is the fact that they also need to understand Web3.js, Web3 Py, or Ethers.js. These are basically JavaScript libraries or Python libraries that allow you to connect your smart contract to the front end of a particular dApp. Uh, so imagine this: if a smart contract or blockchain is the backend and your UI is the front end that you have developed for users to interact, the thing that connects both of them is these libraries, Web3.js or Ethers.js. I personally would recommend go to Ethers.js because that's more latest and it has a lot of features right now. But yeah, you need to learn any one of them to be able to connect your smart contract to your front end. You need to learn any one of them to be able to interact with your smart contracts very effectively. So these were the smart contract basics, right? Um, where can you learn all these things? I think I have shared the slides with the host already. I will provide the links as well. But these are some of the learning resources I would recommend to begin with. Solidity documentation for people who are starting out with smart contract development, it might be very overwhelming because I mean, technical documentations in general are really technical. So it's really hard for anyone to learn smart contract development like directly from the documentation. It has to be a mix of blogs, documentation, YouTube videos, and over again, at least for the first few months. So some of the cool interactive things that we have is Crypto Zombies. I think most of you might have already played with it. So Crypto Zombie is an interactive learning tool where you develop a contract in a fun and interactive way, and you learn a lot of things. By the way, I did that a couple of years ago, and then there are a couple of developers like dev advocates like Patrick Collins or Nader Dabit. You can go to the YouTube channel and you can learn from that. Open Zeppelin, the reason I have mentioned it is because chances are if you start smart contract development, you will come across Open Zeppelin libraries. They're the best ones so far. So for example, they have really minimized the development time that is taken in developing contracts, because they have Open Zeppelin have provided you with a lot of tools and libraries. so that you don't have to write or reinvent the code again and again. For example, if you want to develop a simple ERC20 token, you can just go and import OpenZeppelin library and develop it. That does not mean that you should not learn to develop yourself, but OpenZeppelin provides a lot of tools and libraries, which basically minimizes the development time in general, and which is why it's really important to learn from the OpenZeppelin directly. They have their cool blogs and they have cool development articles on how to securely develop smart contracts. Okay, now we're done with the learning resources, talking about the development tools. So we have Remix, we have Truffle, Hard Hat. Brownie is something that you can, for people who really love Python, they can go with Brownie. I personally have not used Brownie yet because I am mostly done with Hard Hat, and I'm right now learning Foundry. So if someone is learning Foundry here, they can just ping me and we can learn together. Ganache CLI is something that might help in the development side. So these are the tools, right? Raising the bar. The reason I mention this is because I noticed that when in my earlier talks, I used to mention these first two slides, smart contract basics and development practices and how you develop smart contracts. But I realized people often get stuck after that. So they let's say they started learning about smart contract, they started learning about blockchain, they developed a few very simple contracts, and that's basically it. Now they're confused what to do next, because making simple contracts won't really get you a job, ideally, because most of the smart contracts that you see right now in the Web3 world, most of them revolve around DeFi, most of them revolve around tokens. So a simple setter and getter contract won't really get you anywhere. So you have to raise the bar continuously, constantly, consistently, again and again. And how do you raise the bar? You raise the bar by learning things that are beyond just Solidity. So you know how Solidity works now, you know how development tool works. Now it's time for you to understand, first of all, what are different token standards. You need to understand what is ERC20 token, ERC721, what's the difference between fungible assets and non-fungible assets, why they're important, and what is ERC1155. And then for people who are interested in learning how they can change the code of a contract which is already deployed, which is what I was talking about, upgradable contracts. So in order to write upgradable contracts, you need to learn these ERCs, right? You need to learn ERCs, by the way, is basically these are the standards of how a particular token or how a particular procedural contract should look like. So raising the bar means you learn something more advanced than just Solidity basics, than just smart contract basics, because that's how you stand out in the market, right? So now you know ERC20 tokens, you know the token standards, you know how to upgrade contracts. Good. Now you come out and you understand the DeFi terms. One reason, by the way, why most of these hacks happen and why developers fail to develop a secure contract is because we as a developer have very less idea of financial terms. We hardly understand the complex financial theories that are there right now. But what happened is over time, smart contract and Ethereum became a lot more about finance than anything else. So now we have developers who are developing contracts that is supposed to be a DeFi protocol, but they are not very 100% sure of the financial transactions that are happening. So they are not sure about how loans work or how collateral works, and they end up making mistakes. Which is why, in case you are interested in DeFi, it's perhaps important for you to understand some financial terms as well. For example, what is lending, borrowing, and specifically how lending and borrowing works in DeFi. So you can go and look at protocols like Compound and Aave and how they are doing it. You need to learn how Flash Loan works. So this is a really incredible invention, by the way, where you can take loans without giving any collateral, and you can pay back the loan in the same transactions. This, by the way, is not at all possible in traditional world. It's only possible in the smart contract world and Web3 world. Then you need to understand how on-chain governance works. So like I mentioned in the very first slides, Web3 allows people and community members to be the owner of the product. How exactly it does that? So it does that through on-chain governance. On-chain governance means you can actually raise a proposal, and people who have tokens of your project, they can actually come and vote. And when they vote, if the vote passes, if your proposal passes, it is automatically executed in the smart contract. So these are the few things that you need to learn to stand out in the crowd of Web3, so that you can become a good developer and you can get a good job and good opportunity to contribute your part in the Web3 world, right? Some of the projects that you must look at least after you have learned the basics of blockchain and Solidity, are Uniswap, Aave and Compound, ENS, and Alti solutions like Polygon. These will give you, I mean, there are tons of projects in Web3, so you can't really examine and research on all of them. But if you research at least the basics and the good ones, chances are you will cover and you will understand most of what Web3 is about. And there are definitely a lot more. I'm not including all of them here. So this was all about development specifically, but now let's talk about people who actually want to go into security. Because like I said, there is a high demand for auditors and there is a low supply. So it's a very good chance for you to make it big in the auditing industry. Uh, what to learn, where to learn. To begin with, there have been enormous hacks right now, which is a bad thing for Web3 world in general, but which is a good thing for students and people like you, because now you have a lot more content and a lot more data of what different kind of attacks do happen in the smart contract world. So there is this entire list of hacks that you can get. I'll provide this link as well in the document, which is rect.com, where every smart contract that is hacked, they do a blog post on it. They make you understand how exactly the hack happened. And yeah, that's where you can learn about different attacks. But while beginning with Solidity security, it might be a bit tricky and hard to understand because it's a vast topic and there are very less content. So I try to create content around security, but again, I mean, I'm not doing it consistently. I try to do it as much as possible. But there are good contents with Open Zeppelin. There are good contents from Consensus, which basically tells you the best recommendations, the best practices of developing a smart contract. So if you want to be in security, you have to do a bit more research and you have to burn a lot more midnight oils than just a developer, because now your task is not just to develop contracts, but it's also to understand how they can be broken and how some bad actor can take advantage of it. So understanding the reentrancy attack is really important, by the way, which is why I've wrote it in the first place, because so the very first time when we understood what smart contract attacks might mean is when the DAO hack happened, and we lost millions of dollars just because of a small bug, and it happened really early in the Web3 world, and that's what the first time we understood what worse can happen if smart contracts are not designed securely. So this is what you will learn. The best way to learn security, by the way, in my opinion, is to learn through interaction, is to learn through games. So there are a couple of CTF and challenges like If You're Not Damn Vulnerable DeFi. These are basically games designed by some really cool community members of Web3, where they provided you challenges with a particular contract, and they have the challenge is to break the contract or hack the contract. Once you do, your level is up and you move to the next round. This is more like an interactive game sort of thing, but when you do it, you realize you have learned a lot more than just reading blogs and watching YouTube videos. So yeah, do try this. I have pasted the links here as well. Do try this once. Moving to security is really tough without knowing about your tools, because like I mentioned, you need help of some of these tools. So for automated testing, you can just use Slither. For first testing tools, first testing, by the way, basically means you try to provide a large amount of random data continuously to your smart contract to see where it breaks, for what given values it breaks. So testing randomly completely. And Ekinda is the one that provides you that feature. You can use that. Security analysis tool like Mithril can also be used. Surya is a really great tool, and it's, by the way, it's not just for auditors, it's also for developers, because this tool allows you to convert your entire code into flowcharts. So now you are able to see from the top to bottom of how each function flow works, and you are able to actually visualize the entire contract architecture, which gives you an incredibly amazing clarity of what a contract looks like, right? And last but not the least is Tenderly, which is a real-time monitoring system and a debugging tool. So if you guys haven't checked Tenderly yet, you should check it. Tenderly basically allows you to debug any failed transaction on Ethereum, mainnet or testnet, doesn't matter. But if you just paste the transaction hash into that tool, it will give you the exact line number of where the transaction went wrong and what needs to be fixed. So that's really cool. Cool. So that brings us to the end of the slide. I usually like to end with this because, like I mentioned, when you develop a smart contract, you are writing code that is supposed to handle people money, that is supposed to handle the community members money. And writing a code that can store money is great power. I mean, you have a lot of power as a developer in your hands. And like the Spider-Man said, with great power comes great responsibility. So as a smart contract developer, there is enormous responsibility on your shoulders to make it right. And to make it right, you have to be really sincere and you have to be really committed to what you're doing. Because if you mess up, chances are your funds are lost. So yeah, with great power comes great responsibility. And if you are choosing smart contract development, I wish you all the best, but I also say be very secure and be very aware of what we are developing and try to learn as much as possible like a student. So yeah, that's basically it. Thank you. I think I can move to questions now.
Perfect. Okay, sorry. So I think we left off at 1556, so 356. I think that that was.
I'm sorry, I couldn't really hear you. Can you repeat it?
Oh, I'm sorry. Yes. So we left off around 3:56 p.m. So we have. You can start from there with the questions.
Sure.
Smart contracts, and if you can read it out loud, please.
Perfect. I think I will stop the screen share, right? This time?
Yes.
Lovely. Cool. So let me go back to the questions. Sorry, what was the time that you mentioned? Because my time on my screen is a bit different than yours, I think. So.
Oh, 356. It actually says Zoom user. I don't know why. It's after the one which you use, truffle or hard hat from Mohammed.
Okay, got it. I found the link that I shared as well. So
yes,
perfect.
Exactly.
Perfect, cool. I can take it from here. Thanks.
Thank you.
Which you use, truffle or hard hat? I prefer hard hat, but I also recommend not following my suggestions blindly. You are free to go and experiment on yourself and see what you like, and then you can proceed accordingly. But ideally, truffle was the first one that entered the market, but then hard hat came along and it was really fast to develop using hard hat. So I do prefer hard hat. How smart contracts can be used in companies like Amazon and Alibaba? Can those enterprises develop smart contracts with their client in order to implement certain conditions to use their service efficiently? Yes, they can. So that's the beauty of smart contracts. The smart contracts are not supposed to be used between a limited set of parties. They can be used within an organization. For example, let's say if I have my own company and I have, let's say, 10 partners, with whom I want to do a vesting period, I no longer need a lawyer or a legal procedure to do the vesting. I can basically create a vesting smart contract. I can store the funds in it, and those funds will be vested to all my investors as per the rule of the smart contract. So yes, that's possible. Is there a blockchain technology that which allows async execution of smart contracts and a blockchain technology which allows cron job itself instead of using JS? Just to avoid JS or code base. Okay, there might be. I mean, I'm not really aware if I have used any one of them till now, but if you are supposed to avoid JS, yeah, I mean, don't really avoid JavaScript when it comes to blockchain because chances are you might interact with it time and again, over and again. So yeah. What is your personal opinion about the future of smart contracts, even with the concern about the limitations? Yeah, good question. So smart contracts, no doubt, right now they have their own limitations. But as far as I have seen, I mean, I've been in the smart contract world since it was in 0.4 version. So I have seen a long journey from 0.4 to 0.8.9, and I know that the Solidity team in itself, like, and I can specifically talk about Solidity because I use that language. They have been very active in their surveys. They have been very active in fixing the bugs of previous versions. So I am very optimistic about the future of the smart contracts because, like you already see, right? There are a lot of pros of smart contracts and very few cons, which, by the way, only exist because it's new in the world. But yeah, as we move forward, those will be fixed. So I'm pretty optimistic about it. And if you're thinking, if you're asking this question just because you're confused whether or not you should learn the smart contract, I would say go ahead and learn it because it has a bright future. What is for you the future of smart contracts? Okay, I lost the question again. Cool. What is for you the future of smart contracts with the increase of utilization of HFT in financial sectors? I think it's really great. Like I explained, I mean, it's really bright future for smart contracts in any financial sector right now because with every new tool that we're developing, with every new DeFi protocol, we are trying to do something that has not been done before. Like I mentioned, flash loans were never done in traditional world and can never be done in traditional world. So yeah, that's really a good question, and yeah, it has a bright future in the for smart contracts. You explained that a smart contract can't know the price of ETH in real instance, but isn't it possible to add that kind of option in the code of the blockchain to have a direct link between the price provided by the market and the smart contracts? Yes, there is option to do that, and that's what I said, right? You have to use oracles to link a smart contract with the real world data because a smart contract cannot really uh, interact directly with the real world data because that's what I said. Smart contracts are black box, so the reason they are secure and they have their own truth machine, they have their own truth state, is because they can't interact with the real world. So you can still know the price of ETH in a smart contract, but you have to rely on certain oracles, and how that oracle is fetching the data, that's the concern. So if they are a malicious oracle, chances are they can manipulate the oracle and they can provide wrong data to the smart contract, and the smart contract will have to believe it because it cannot really verify the real world data. So yeah. How to be an auditor of a smart contract? You become an auditor of a smart contract due to two reasons. First, you have a real interest in security of such softwares. You are really concerned about security of smart contracts. And the second way to become a smart contract auditor is to understand at least the basics of solidity understanding. So one very quick tip that I can give you is, if you're a complete beginner, don't worry about smart contract auditing. Uh, you need to first understand solidity basics very clearly, because most of what you will learn in the auditing section, or most of what you will learn in smart contract auditing, will rely a lot on the very basics of a smart contract. How external calls are made, how funds transfers are done, why state changes are important to be done before or after the external call. So these type of questions are the basics of solidity. So if you're a complete beginner, start with the basics and then gradually move towards security of the smart contracts. Uh, is it possible to connect a smart contract with mobile app having React Native in the front end? Yes, yes, it is possible. Can you mention in comment things to learn as a beginner? I have provided a complete list of things that you can learn, starting from Web3 to blockchain basics to consensus protocols and smart contracts and then security. I'll update the list again just to add one more column of tools that you should use. But yeah, I have already shared the documentation with them. Um, which one is preferable to use, Web3.js or Ethers.js? Is there a way to connect to MetaMask using it? Yes, there is a way to connect to MetaMask using Web3.js. I would personally say try using Ethers.js because, I mean, being software developers, we should be very aware about where the trend is going and which new tools are coming, which new versions of tools are coming. So Ethers.js is the new one. Web3 is a bit old now, but they both, I mean, work pretty similar, but Ethers.js have quite a lot of features that you might like to develop faster. So I would suggest Ethers.js, but again, go and try Web3.js first and then come back to Ethers.js if that's okay with you. Cool, let's move to the next question. What is the place you recommend to learn how to code for free? Sure, so talking about smart contracts specifically, you cannot really rely on one resource because like I mentioned, if you rely completely on documentation is really tricky to understand. If you rely completely on YouTube, that also might not work because YouTube videos or content that are there on YouTube, I have seen, they are in bits and pieces. And you can't really learn in depth about anything in just bits and pieces. So you have to basically, the best way to learn for free is to do a combination of documentation, tech articles, and YouTube. On YouTube, I would suggest try Eat the Blocks, the channel, or Smart Contract Programmer. That's really a good channel of how smart contract development usually works. Next question is, love you and thanks. You have been a great teacher. One of the most complete and clear session. Oh, thanks. That's not really a question, but yeah, thank you so much. Some of the people were not able to see the slides. I think it was all okay from my side, but maybe your net was a bit slow. Hi, since I come from a non-tech background, I think, and if I want to learn smart contract security, where should I start from? If you're coming from a non-tech background, you should start from the step 0 that I mentioned. First of all, it's going to be a long journey, so you have to be a bit patient. I don't recommend moving forward towards something just because it looks shiny and just because it looks promising, because ultimately it's not only about entering a particular sector, it's not only about becoming a smart contract developer, it's also about surviving as a smart contract developer in this world, because web3 in general is really fast, and people who are coming here directly as a smart contracts developer who have no idea about how web or tech in general works, they might find it very hard to stay longer in this era. So yeah, if you're a complete beginner, if you're a non-tech, try to learn the basics of the internet first, then blockchain basics, then a smart contract, and then you come to smart contract security. That's your answer. Is it possible to contact with you in any way? Yes, it is possible to contact with me. I mean, I usually try to help a lot in case you are trying to learn smart contract development or security. So I'm going to provide my link here. So you can connect with me on LinkedIn, Twitter, anywhere that you want. Moving on to the next question. For someone that doesn't know how to write code, how long, more or less, would you say it takes to work as a smart contract auditor? It really depends on how fast you learn things, but ideally I would say it's going to take a year at least. If you consistently work every day of that year, it's going to take at least a year for you to first learn to code. I think it's very difficult for you to examine and review someone's code without knowing how to code yourself. So don't do that. First, learn how to code, because only a good developer can be a good auditor. So auditor is the last step, by the way. So first of all, you have to be a developer to understand the mistakes that a developer can make. So once you're a developer, you can definitely be an auditor. But yeah, don't just rush into it just because, like I said, just because it looks shiny. So yeah, I think more or less it will take at least a year for you to become auditor, given that you work every day and you learn every day. Thank you for your presentation. That was a good explanation. Thank you so much. How long will it take to become a smart contract developer? What are the paths, roles in DeFi, strategy, product management side if you are not a developer? Sure, that's a great question. So as a developer, like I mentioned, it might take from, I mean, considering that you already know the tech and the basics of any language, JavaScript, let's say, it might take just 3 to 6 months for you to become a smart contract developer, because developing a smart contract in general is very easy. Like the programming language Solidity is super easy. You can learn it. It's very developer friendly as well. There is a good community out there who will teach you, who will guide you in every direction. So yeah, learning, I think it will take hardly 3 to 6 months to become a good Solidity developer. If you are not a developer, there are enormous roles right now. First is product management, that because product in Web3 is a bit different than the traditional world. So that's where you can really learn about how dApps work, and then you can rock it there. Other roles, if you're not a developer, is to, and let's say if you're not a developer, but if you're someone who is very good with finance, chances are you will have a very good role in DeFi, because like I mentioned, most of us, even me, I don't have a strong financial degree. What all that I learn about finance is from learning in Web3 itself, right? So if you're someone who has a traditional background in finance, you can join the DeFi community and you can basically be a part of any protocol that is working specifically in finance. You can work on the tokenomics stuff. You can help companies design their tokenomics. That's again a good role. So yeah. Next question is, what's beyond smart contract security in terms of general security of Web3 though? Do Web2 security principles apply here, excluding the smart contract auditing? Very good question. So Web2 security principles, yes, I mean, we cannot completely exclude Web2 security principles because not, by the way, not every hack that has happened in the smart contract world is because of the smart contract's fault. Some of them also happened because the backend that was storing the private keys was not very secure. Some of them also happened because of backend issues, which was basically a traditional Web2 issue, right? So yes, there is some sort of link between Web2 and Web3 security. But ideally, when it comes to smart contract security specifically, Web2 security principles won't help a lot because smart contracts are a completely different thing. Um, Automated testing tool links, I will provide that definitely after this session ends. I have actually shared a Google Doc where I have listed down all the links, some of them. I will provide the links for automated testing tools as well. Is there any math required? Yes. You don't have to be a super genius in mathematics, but some knowledge about basics, at least, about about understanding how mathematical problems can be solved. It might help you because, like I mentioned, most of smart contract revolves around finance, and finance does have math. So yeah, math is really something that you might need. Um, cool. Let's move to the next question. Can you tell me how can we make a portfolio for blockchain architect specialization, and what parts of blockchain industry should we implement, such as DeFi, DAO, or whatever covers the scope of the BC sector in terms of architecture specialization? I'm not a blockchain architect myself, but I think uh, if you have enough research material on any specific architecture of blockchain, that might help you grab the attention of the right people. So that's something you can look into. What are the main difference between Ethereum and Quant in a smart contract? I'm not sure what exactly that is. Um, does Solidity have a scope outside smart contract implementation? No, because that is specifically designed for smart contracts to be run on Ethereum blockchain or EVM compatible chains. We can create a smart contract and deploy it on the blockchain, and we use testnet for the gas fee. Mhm. In which case we use the mainnet for the gas fee. I'm not sure if I understand your question correctly, but ideally, whatever gas fee you pay in the testnet is not really real money, right? So it's a test ether. The reason we deployed on testnet is to do, because testnet executes a smart contract exactly the similar way mainnet does. So it's a good tool for us to simulate the same behavior, and we can go and test it out, and we can go and see how things work. And we can even pay gas fee, which is completely free because the ether we are using is fake. Um, Mainnet deployment we do when we actually have to deploy the contract for officially for the community. So imagine this: testnet deployments are testing, which is staging environment, let's say in Web2 terms, and mainnet deployment is the production level deployment. That's it. Could you please write the names of smart contract channels, YouTube channels you mentioned? Sure. One name is smart contract programmer. This is the name. Other is Eat the Blocks, but I usually prefer smart contract programmer, so that's the good one. Cool. Is anywhere to connect with you? Yeah, I just provided my link. I'm interested in the product management side of the story. Are there interesting links? Communities in finance mainly. I think I can provide. I have to look into it, but I think I can provide some of those. Is Solana with Rust good? Um, Personally, I'm not a very big fan of Solana blockchain. It seems very centralized to me. You can turn it off anytime you want. That's not really a blockchain. So I have not really explored Solana that much, but I can definitely advocate that fact that Rust is a definitely good language. Not with Solana, but Rust can be used with other chains as well. Let's say if you are working with Cosmos, you might need Rust. And Rust in general, I think apart from smart contract development and Solidity, Rust is the next big thing that might come. So if you are interested in Rust, you can definitely go ahead and learn more about it. Thanks a lot. That the session is informative. Thank you so much. I think that's the end of the questions. So yeah, yeah. Over to you, man. Thank you.
Uh, Ahmad is asking if you need to learn the development side for the final project. However, remember that it depends on the partner that launches the project. Usually to create an MVP, it's optional. So even if you pick a partner that has this, you don't need to do it. But again, please wait until we have posted all of the projects at the end in December. And then we will do another session on project works to explain and go in depth on what the partners are asking, what the requirements are, and everything. So on Monday, you will receive an email with the second test. Again, it will have a deadline, so make sure that you complete it. Remember that it is one of the requirements to complete 80% of them in order to get the certification and have all of the Masters App features unlocked, unless you are, of course, part of Masters Plus or Masters Young. Okay, everyone, thank you so much for being present today. Thank you again, Sarah, for an awesome lesson. I think we got a lot of great feedback. Everyone is very happy. And okay, everyone else, you will find on Telegram in the next week, the next Masters Extra appointments. And then we will see each other very soon. Thank you and have a great day, everyone.